Welcome to our podcast, Noise to Music, where we study relationships in our lives and we take the noise in our life and turn it into beautiful, wonderful music. I'm your host, Chaim Levy. Today we're going to be dealing with 2 of the 8 reasons to be in a relationship. We're going to be dealing with we have a need to be loved, as well as mirror, seeing ourselves through another person. So let's jump right into it. We're all created with a need to be loved. We've mentioned it in the last podcast number 12. This is podcast number 13, where we understand by now that we have an ingrown and created part of us that is need to be loved, not to be alone, right? Eselo ezer kenegdo. Now this can come in many different forms, right? But to understand that it's a healthy part of us is what we're going to be discussing today. It's not a sense of weakness, and it's not a sense of neediness as well. It's part of our human DNA, which helps us become who we want to be. That's called Eselo Ezer Kenegdo. So let's discuss an article written by Dr. Ken Page entitled The Harmful Myth About Needing to Be Loved, right? Today's society gives it kind of like a weak twist, especially in the male world. If a male has a need to be loved, a need to be nurtured, cared for, to care for others, to love others, and so on and so forth, that whole side of him is to be considered as a weakness, right? I do suggest that, if possible, give a glance to a book that just came out by Justin Baldini entitled Man Enough, which does talk about this at length. Now, the feeling of a deep aching need for love has been given a bad rap, he writes. We're taught that need is a cringeworthy emotion, a source of shame, right? It's shameful. You should be strong. You should be, totally. It's interesting. Our last podcast was independence, right? You should be completely independent and not have to be relying on anyone. It's important to remember that there's a distinction between need and neediness. All right, let's focus on that for a minute. There's need, which is a natural human need that God has placed within us. And then there's neediness. Neediness means we take that need and we bring it to a level that's completely above and beyond and interferes with our life and the lives of others. Neediness comes from trying to suppress or transcend our authentic feelings of need. So when you have a need and you try and suppress it, that turns into neediness. Okay? So when someone does have neediness, what that ends up doing, that never ends up working out well, because that's going to come out in some aggressive format. Either you'll turn into be a manipulating person, or you'll punish others or yourself. You might turn into passive aggressive or something to that extent, right? But when we don't have a balance between need and neediness, we are supposed to take what we need. We're supposed to, let's call it, marinate in the sense of being loved, right? But when it becomes unbalanced, then it turns into neediness, right? On the other hand, if we suppress that need, we push it away, so it's lingering within us. And then our body, our emotion decides to fight back, and it always, as we said, comes out in a negative format. It comes out in an unhealthy way. So we need to embrace the fact that yes, we do need attention, and by now you should be comfortable with the fact that you do deserve attention and want to give attention. If we don't do that, other than the mentioned above, what can be is something worse or just as bad as it coming out in an aggressive format, is those emotions of needing to be loved, the needing to love, are pushed down so much that they actually become numb, and we start losing access to them. We turn into a robot. We're isolated from people, disconnected from feelings, disconnected from ourselves, all because we're kind of like not man enough or not vulnerable enough to realize, yeah, I need to be loved. And as we said, it can come in many different platforms, in the sense of just wanting to have and receive healthy attention from people that are healthy in our life. Okay, this intense feeling, this drive towards connection it's a gift. It's a healthy and it's an essential part of humanity. It's something that builds bonds and everlasting emotions and memories and connections and so on and so forth. That need to be loved, needs to be embraced. Listen to previous podcasts where we've spoken about the sense of self and that how that has to be developed. That was reason number 4. Let's jump into reason number 5, which is a reason of the 8 reasons that we need a relationship in our life, which is a mirror to see ourselves through. Very interesting topic over here. We're going to be expanding on the idea that relationships are essentially a mirror. Okay, you go through you when you look at a mirror, what do you see? You see yourself. And that is essentially what a relationship is. It serves a purpose to be able to see myself. It's able to create a healthy self-image, right? Friendship, romantic relationships, marriage, parenting, being a child, so on and so forth, are a big part of our self-image. I identify myself through how others react to me. Through when I do something, I see how they react. That's a big source of my self-confidence. It's a big source of my self-concept and a big source of my self-esteem. Okay, we experience ourselves as we see ourselves. The story you tell yourself is the story that you see about yourself. So it's very important to appreciate that in a relationship and give value to ourselves, give value to the relationship that we might be in, because that's part of creating my identity. Okay, it acts as a mirror. An infant is not born just a blank page. How does that infant develop a sense of self? It's through their caregivers, for better or for worse. A child that's nurtured and loved will have an easier time accepting love and will feel worthy of it because they're kind of used to it. Hey, I've felt this before. I've seen this before. A child that's neglected or abused physically, God forbid, or emotionally will have a harder time accepting love from others because what is this? I don't know where this comes from. Why are they giving me attention? There must be something wrong in this situation. They start denying it or suppressing it or something to that extent. So that stems from our early childhood. The love that we've received, the nurturing that we've received, if it's positive, it'll transfer and carry over into adulthood. We'll have an easier time accepting, we'll feel worthy of it, we'll be able to give it more naturally. If we haven't, we've been neglected emotionally, then we'll have a much harder time accepting it, we'll deny it, and we'll definitely have a hard time giving it because it's not worth anything. It's kind of a feeling that I've never experienced before, right? So you can see that relationships are a big mirror towards our identity and self-image. Now, I want to kind of veer off a little bit. I want to cheat a little bit. And within this idea of relationships being a mirror, I want to talk about one specific aspect that I've seen many, many times. I've been in education for over 20 years. And I've seen many, many times people grapple with with concept. And what is that? That's the aspect of perfectionism, a perfectionist. People that are black and white and have to do everything perfectly in order to have a healthy sense of identity. Where does it come from? And through discovering that, we can kind of understand the mirror principle and where I can get it. And what I could do about it is a better way of saying it. So first place, perfectionists, right? They're high achieving people that always, they want to accomplish, they have these aspirations and they want to experience the best and be the best. But when things don't work out their way, they get into a tremendous sense of stress and distress with the process, right? For a perfectionist, so much time can be spent on focusing on, let's call it the rear view mirror of the imperfect outcome, that the opportunity itself is missed. Does that sound like anyone? Does that sound like you? Do you sometimes find yourself focusing on the sense that it has to be completely perfect, only to find yourself, hey, I never enjoyed the process because I was so caught up in making sure everything was perfect, right? Where does that come from? So that can come from two places as per this conversation of mirror. One is conditional praise. It becomes a mirror that leads to conditional self-acceptance. What does that mean? if you're raised as a good kid, okay, you're a good kid. I have different types of students. Some students were troublemakers. You ask them, where'd you go to high school? They say, what year? What part of that year? Because they got thrown out of so many schools. But guess what? They've also learned to deal with the fact that not being perfect is great and can work out just fine. We'll try again. They've learned to pick themselves up. I'm not advocating not being a good student and so on, but when taken the right way, challenges and tribulations are of benefit. They teach us that life doesn't have to be perfect, and it turns out, quote unquote, perfectly. But when you were a good kid, you kind of got upset when you only got a 99.8 on your test and you missed a little extra credit and you went crying home because you're so upset, right? What happens is you develop this idea that life has to be perfect. You're not used to things not being perfect. You don't know how to deal with it. So you got to revisit it. You rethink it. You churn it in your brain again and again and again until you drive yourself silly because you don't know how to deal with anything else. You can't accept the fact that it's not perfect. You're a goody-goody type of kid. Another thing, as we mentioned, conditional praise, which is a topic that needs to be figured out within itself in terms of nurturing our children. When you say a statement like, "Oh, you did so good in school, we love you," right? That's a damaging statement to a certain extent. Why? What does a child hear? Doing good in school equals love, equals success, right? Self-value. If I do bad in school, then I'm bad, then I should hate myself, right? When a child's love and attention is conditional, meaning it's given on the condition and on the status of their success, that's the only thing they know. So you turn into a perfectionist, meaning how could I not be perfect? If I'm not perfect, I don't deserve love. I don't deserve attention. I'm failure. I'm bad. Because you're such a good kid, we love you. No, love and attention from a parent, from a loved one, is unconditional. It's unconditional. We've spoken about that. Please refer back to the first podcast where we talk about the fact that God loves us irrelevant of what we do, whether we're good or whether we're bad, whether we're quote unquote sinners or whether we're do the most righteous things. God loves us. He's our Father. Your father loves you. Your father and mother love you regardless. They're supposed to. Right? If you don't do your homework and you don't eat your broccoli and you don't take your vitamins, you don't sleep well, you're only hurting yourself. But you're not hurting the love that your parents or your loved ones in your life are supposed to be giving you. When we were raised with conditional praise, meaning you do good, you get a smile, you get warmth from your parents, and so on and so forth, that's how we talk to ourselves. My performance and love of myself is dependent on how I do. If I do good, I behave, I set my goals and I keep to them, then I'm a good person and I could love myself. If I set my goals and I fail, then I'm a bad person and I deserve and have a right to hate myself. Okay? That's perfectionism. That's black and white. Now, what is the Torah's perspective on it? What's the Bible's perspective? Mesechet Menachot speaks out, Echad ha'marabeh ve'echad ha'mamit ubilvat shichaven libo l'shamayim. That the person, God does not look at what it is that you accomplish, ever. He looks at the effort that you put in. Whether you're doing a lot, the Torah says, whether you're doing a little, that's not what God's paying attention. Yechaven libor, make sure your heart is turning towards God. You tried your best. Whatever your best is, God loves you. Whether the outcome is what you expected or not, the love is not dependent on what you accomplish. It's dependent on you. You're His child. He loves you. End of story. Okay? So that's the mirror principle, right? If we don't do that, then what's internalized is a sense of being only as good as one's performances. Conditional praise, what it does is it becomes a mirror that leads to conditional self-acceptance. You only love yourself, you're only happy with life, you're only happy with everything surrounding you if you have the success that you've told yourself you need to have. So what does a relationship do? A relationship acts as a mirror. We see ourselves through another person. And what we need to do is understand that relationships are meant to be a mirror, but they're also meant to be a mirror for us to understand, where am I holding with this? Am I too black and white in my life? Am I always overthinking things? Am I too tough on myself? Well, these are only things that you can answer. So today we discussed another two reasons what relationships bring into our life. One is they fulfill a need to be loved. We spoke about that, focusing on from a male perspective, and they also serve as a mirror to see ourselves through another person. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast, and I look forward to the next one.